What's going on, guys? Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Hope you're all having a great week. So I wanted to jump on today because today is a very special day for me. And if any of you have just seen my last post, today marks 17 years since my father passed away. And if any of you, know my story or had a conversation with me, my father passed away back in 2008. He had a heart attack, just really out of nowhere. I was only 16 at the time, and as you can imagine, it was pretty traumatic, and it really, you could say it really broke me, from such a young age. I think anybody, losing a parent, especially at such a young age, is one of the most difficult things that you can go through. And what I really wanted to share today was some of the lessons that I learned, from my father, from my father's death, and some of the things that I, really feel can add value, because I said this on my story yesterday, things in life don't happen to you, they happen for you. And we're going to deal with adversity, circumstances, things are just going to happen. Sometimes terrible things are going to happen to us. But how we choose to respond to those situations is really going to determine where we end up, So some of the lessons that, my father taught me, I'm really going to go into, seven lessons, really. For the first 4 lessons are going to be things that my father taught me personally, things that I learned from my dad, the values that my dad instilled into me. And one of the first lessons was, too much of anything in life is really not good for you. Now, this was quite hypocritical from my dad, really, because my dad was, you could say he was a workaholic, because he was always grinding, he was always investing time into his business, into people, and not really, you couldn't say he had much balance in his life, put it that way, right? Now, I'm not against hard work. I work very hard myself, but I do understand that you do need to have balance in your life. Otherwise, you're going to be out of whack. You're going to be, you're going to reach a point where you're going to be very unfulfilled and very burnt out if you're doing too much of anything, whether that's too much work, too much play, too much sex, too much partying, gambling, too much overconsumption of anything really can just not be good for you. So although my dad didn't really live those words, you could say, because he was a workaholic, he did run himself into the ground, I've learnt that from his death, So just understand that, you may be working really hard at something and perhaps not seeing the results you want in that area. Perhaps you do need to balance some things out in your life so that you can create better results and be more fulfilled and be happier, essentially, right? The next lesson, number 2, when you think when you think you really understand something and you get it, just know that you don't. I remember my dad used to say to me, he would tell me something, and I was a kid, he would say something to me, right? Like, son, you shouldn't do this, or whatever. And I would say, I know. And you know what he'd say to me? He'd go, son, you don't know nothing. And I didn't really understand what he meant. I don't know if he was just trying to, like, you know, bring me down or something. But, you know, it's only until later in life that I understood what he meant, because we really don't know nothing. We think we know. But the more you know, the more you'll realise and understand what you don't know. The deeper I study me, the deeper I study the mind, I understand how much I don't know, right? So the lesson in this is always be a student. Always know that there's always deeper levels for you to understand things, right? Never think that you know enough, because you really don't. There's an abundance of knowledge and things for you to learn and for you to get better at, you know, and you've got to understand that you don't have it all figured out. You don't know, you know. So that's number 2. Number 3, and one that, you know, I'm extremely grateful for this particular lesson from my father, and it's love others unconditionally, regardless of, you know, what they do. Love others, right? You know, my father loved people. He was one of the most loving and affectionate people that you'd ever meet, right? He instilled a lot of love and affection into me. You know, I was very fortunate to be able to have that time with my dad. You know, when I was a kid, he gave me a lot of affection, and it's really made me a loving person. You know, because I love people, I really do, and I want others to feel that. And you want to do good for others. I say this all the time, you know, anytime you meet somebody, or you, anytime you meet someone, or you come in contact with any friends or anyone you know, any acquaintance, you always want to leave them with the impression of increase. Look, I've got a little friend here, look, Mr. Squirrel, he thinks I've got some nuts or something. He's trying to creep up next to me. It's quite funny. Yeah, you really want to do good for others, right? And I'm not saying that you should bend over backwards for people and you know, do things at the expense of your health or your well-being. But what I'm saying is you should do what you can to give increase to other people. That's what I'm saying. Because that's what my dad did. He was always trying to help others and do things to improve the lives of other people. And I'm going to get onto my last point about this, of the negative aspects of this as well, right? So number 4 is live below your means. Live below your means. Now, my father was a businessman, entrepreneur. He worked very hard, and you know, he earned really great money. But I can tell you this, right? My dad was one of the most stingiest, tightest people you could ever meet, right? He never purchased anything brand new. Everything was secondhand. He was always trying to find a good deal. He would buy his clothes secondhand. He would go to boot sales on a Sunday morning, and he would come back with loads of stuff, like secondhand clothes. Like he never liked spending a lot of money, right? He worked very hard. He earned a lot of money, but he never, he wasn't materialistic. And I'm not against being materialistic at all. But what I'm saying is, like, if you really want to build financial stability for yourself, and financial freedom, then you have to go through a season of your life where you do need to live below your means and not be extravagant. Like, that was one thing. My dad was not extravagant at all. He bought everything secondhand, right? Now, that's not me, personally. I don't like buying secondhand things, you know, like, might buy a used car, for example, but like, you know, clothes and things that I want to be fresh. Like, I'm not going to buy secondhand things. I'm not saying you should buy secondhand things, but what I'm saying is live below your means. Don't spend more money than what you're earning right now, because it's going to hurt you, right? My dad earned a lot, but he didn't like spending money. You know, he was always looking at where he could invest his money so that it could grow, doing business, buying properties. And that's one thing that I've learned. You know, you've got to build your foundation first. Set your life up in a way where you have that financial stability behind you. And then, you know, once you've got that and you're fairly comfortable, you can now treat yourself to nice things. If you want to buy, you know, a nice watch or a new car, or you want to go to the Maldives or the Caribbean or somewhere, something that's going to require you to splash out quite a bit because you've worked hard for it, right? But in the beginning, whilst you're creating that life for yourself, like, be prepared to live below your means, you know, for some time, okay? Now, getting on to the last 3 lessons that I want to share. These lessons are more so what I learned from my father's death. Like, my father actually passing away, and what could have actually been prevented from him, you know, passing away at 49 years old. Like, what could he have done so he could have perhaps still been here today? Now, the first one is take care of yourself, right? Dad, if only you'd taken care of yourself a little bit better. Now, my dad wasn't unfit, he wasn't unhealthy, he wasn't, you know, he didn't have vices, he didn't do drugs or drink, you know, he might have had a glass of whiskey now and again, but he wasn't somebody that would, he didn't need things to make himself feel good. You know, he was pretty focused on, you know, his mission, building his business. So he never picked up any vices. He might have had a glass of whiskey here and there. But the only thing I would say, you know, my dad was in, you know, he wasn't overweight, he wasn't obese, he was, you know, a fairly slim guy. But I do believe he could have taken care of his health a little bit better. I do believe he could have been a little bit more athletic. He could have done more sports. He could have made more time to be fit. And I believe his diet could have been a bit better, in all honesty. I do believe he could have eaten healthier and prioritised himself, you know, working out, making sure he got enough exercise daily, because he was spending all his time working. You know, that's all he did. He would be in his office, you know, sometimes 14, 18-hour days. Like, he'd be, I'd go to bed at night and I'd see him, I'd see him on his laptop, you know, or by his computer in his office before he went to bed. And then I'd wake up in the morning, I'd come down, he'd still be on his computer. You know, he was just a grinder. And that was to a point where it was very unhealthy, you know. So, you know, prioritize your health. Make sure you're getting enough exercise daily. You know, you see me, I'm always in the gym, I'm always working out, I'm always getting good nutrition. I prioritize my health because, you know, my dad didn't. That's one of the greatest lessons that I learned from my dad. The next lesson, and this is, you know, kind of going back to the third lesson that I shared with you. Do good for others, but not at the expense of your own health and well-being, right? Now, My dad was, you could say he was a bit of a people pleaser. He loved people. He wanted to do good for others. I don't know if it was, you know, maybe he wanted to be validated by others. I don't know. But he was always going out of his way for people and always just trying to deliver and provide service. But he was doing it at the expense of his own health. He was stressed. You know, my dad's, you know, sometimes he would be very, you know, short-tempered, and you know, if he was in a bad mood, you know, you'd know about it. You know, he'd get frustrated and he'd slam his office door, and he wouldn't want to deal with anybody, right? And the reason why was because he was taking on so much and causing stress on himself. And that was why he had a heart attack. You know, at 49, he brought that on himself because he was just trying to do so much and trying to please so many fucking people, that he essentially put himself into a grave, right? Now, coming back to my last point where I said we must do good for others, you know, that's our duty, that's our purpose on this earth, is to serve others, right? But we've got to take care of ourselves first. You are your number one priority. Because if you're not healthy, if you're not in a good state, then you're not going to be able to fucking help nobody. That's why you got to put yourself first. Make sure that you are in a healthy state, and you're not taking on so much to the point that you're hurting yourself. My dad hurt himself because he did too much for other people and he didn't take care of himself, right? Now, the last point that I want to share, which I believe is probably one of the most important ones on this through these lessons. Don't forget to actually enjoy what you're working hard for. Now, as I said to you, my dad was a workaholic. He did not have balance in his life. You know, we had lovely holidays. You know, I remember when I was a kid, we used to go to Turkey a lot. My dad had, you know, a villa in Bodrum. He actually had two villas in Bodrum, actually, and a boat. We used to go out on the boat and we used to have some really, really great times. You know, I'm so grateful for the life that my dad, you know, created for us, for me and my mum, and the childhood I had. I had such a great childhood, and my dad worked so hard to give me and my mum a great life, and I'm extremely grateful for that. However, whenever we were on vacations or doing things together, my dad wasn't always present. He would be doing things. He would be, you know, in business meetings, he would be doing negotiations, and he just didn't know when to stop. You know, he didn't know when to take a break and actually just be completely present and just enjoy what he was working hard for. You know, he had hobbies and he had friends and he did things, but it wasn't what he preferred to do. He preferred to be working at his desk, doing business, and I completely get it. I've actually adopted a lot of my dad's traits. I like to be doing things all the time. I like to be productive, but I do like to enjoy what I've actually worked hard for. I love to be able to travel. I love to be able to meet new people. I love to be able to do things that I love to do, and essentially have that balance in my life. That's why I do what I do, because I value freedom. I value being able to spend my days living my life by design, not because I have to do things, right? So work hard pursue your goals and dreams. Go after the things that mean a lot to you. But when you achieve those goals and you reach milestones, make sure you take the time to celebrate and just take some time to be present. If you've achieved something, go and celebrate. Take some time with your family, your friends, go away. But don't get too carried away. You know, don't get too carried away with that. Don't get too comfortable, right? Take some time to enjoy yourself, to enjoy your life, because what the hell do we work hard for if we're not at least enjoying what we're doing and actually taking the time to enjoy the fruits of our labour? I'd say that's probably one of the most important points, because my dad did not know how to enjoy himself. You know, he really didn't. He was more happy if other people were enjoying themselves, you know, rather than himself. He just did whatever he could to make sure that others were enjoying themselves and others were happy. But he did it at the expense of his own health and well-being, which is why he's not here today. So there you have it. 7 lessons that I learned from my late and great father, Ibrahim Turgut Erol. And he was a legend. You know, I'm extremely grateful for my father and, you know, what he instilled into me and the man that I've become from, you know, being his son. And I'd really just want you to take some time today. You know, if you're somebody that, you know, perhaps you still got your dad, you still got your mum and dad, just be extremely grateful for that. Or perhaps, you know, you're someone like me and you also lost a parent. You might have lost a father, you might have lost your mother. Just take the lessons from what they instilled into you, or perhaps you didn't really learn that much from them. Perhaps they might have done some things that may have been negative. Learn from them. My dad was not fucking perfect, I can tell you that. He was a great man. He was a good person, but he was not yeah, he wasn't perfect, you know. But he gave me what I needed. And I do believe that as we grow up, as we mature, we look back on our life, we understand what's led us to where we are today. So really just take some time to reflect on your life, look back and be thankful for your parents and what they gave you. I'm very fortunate to still have my mother today. We have an incredible relationship, and I'm grateful for her. Everything she's done for me, everything she does for me, and yeah, just be grateful for that, because life's short. We don't know how much time we have left. We don't know how much time those around us have. So, you know, don't take life for granted. Don't take other people for granted. Be grateful for everything that you have and where life's led you up until now. So I hope that this message brought value to you. I know it was quite long, but I really felt this was on my heart today to share this. And I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, rest of your week, and God bless.